Greetings, Asgardians. I am the entity that whispers the secrets of Odin, and tonight we are about to journey through Valhalla, where the gods are not quite what you expect. But before the winds of destiny carry you too far, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly seek to walk the path of the gods with me. Loki's arrival with the secret ingredients. The evening in Valhalla begins like any other, with the golden hall glittering under the ethereal light that seems to pour from the very sky. The gods are bustling, preparing for the feast to end all feasts, an event that has been talked about for ages. Thor, as always, is grinning from ear to ear, eager to show off his cooking skills, while Odin remains distant, sitting silently on his throne, plotting something unknown. But then, with the suddenness of a thunderclap, Loki appears. He steps into the hall with a grin as wide as the Rainbow Bridge itself. The moment his presence is felt, the room falls into a tense silence. Every god knows that when Loki shows up, mischief follows. However, today Loki is not here for chaos, or at least that's what he wants you to believe. Clutched in his hands are bags of strange ingredients, things none of the gods recognize. There's a distinct smell of something earthy, perhaps too earthy, like mushrooms after the first autumn rain. His usual tricks, they're nowhere to be seen, but his reputation is. "What's this, Loki?" Thor growls from the side, clearly unimpressed by the bags of mystery in the trickster's hands. "Oh, just a little something I have found in Midgard. Something special," Loki responds with a wink that makes the whole room uneasy. "You wouldn't believe the things they cook with down there." The gods exchange wary glances. A feast of such grandeur would require only the finest ingredients. Deer from the sacred woods of Alfheim, honey from the bees of the Valkyries. But Loki, he is always known for mixing things up, and his concoctions have a history of surprising and often disastrous results. Freyr eyes in suspiciously. "What exactly is in those bags, Loki?" she asks, her voice laced with caution. Loki opens one of the bags with exaggerated flourish, pulling out a bundle of what looks like dried seaweed. "This," he announces, holding it up for all to see, "is the essence of Midgardian sea spice, simply the most exquisite addition to any dish, I assure you." A shiver runs down the spine of every god present. Sea spice from Midgard. Something doesn't sit right about it, and they all know it. But Loki is insistent, and his charm is a powerful thing. "Trust me," he says, his voice low and coaxing. "You'll love it." As if summoned by his words, a slight rumble of thunder shakes the hall. Is it the storm outside, or is it something else, something far more foreboding? Thor grumbles, though he can't resist his own curiosity. "Fine, let's see if it's worth the trouble." Loki tosses the sea spice into a pot over the fire, and the smell that fills the air is instantly overwhelming. It's not unpleasant, but it's not what any of the gods expected. It smells like old earth, like something forgotten, with hints of bitter herbs, too sharp to ignore. The gods look around at one another, clearly unsure. As the smell settles, Loki smirks. "The first bite is always the hardest, I suppose," he says, his eyes twinkling with mischief. But as he looks over at the others, they begin to laugh, uneasy at first, and then more genuine, as if weight had been lifted from their shoulders.
perhaps it wasn't so bad after all. Thor's massive hand reaches toward the pot, and before anyone can stop him, he takes a mouthful of the sea spice mixture. And then, for a moment, everything goes quiet. Thor's eyes widen. He looks like he's about to say something, but then he begins to cough violently, sputtering and gasping for air. The gods stare in stunned silence. What in Odin's name is happening? And that's when it begins. As Thor stumbles backwards, Loki's grin widens into something almost too pleased with himself. The first misstep in what promises to be a night of chaos. The sea spice was, after all, only the beginning.
Thor and the giant ox. The gods watch, wide-eyed, as Thor staggers back from the pot, his face contorting in a mix of surprise and discomfort. For a brief, terrifying moment, it looks like the thunder god might collapse right there. The room falls into complete silence. The air is thick with uncertainty. Loki stands there, arms crossed, watching Thor's reaction with barely contained amusement. His lips curl into that signature grin, the one that no one in Asgard can ever quite trust. "Well, Thor," Loki says, his voice smooth as honey, "didn't I warn you? It's a bit much for some, but I'm sure you'll come to appreciate its unique qualities." Thor looks up, his expression still dazed but softening. His usual boisterous attitude has been replaced by something far less certain. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. "By Odin's beard, Loki, what in Midgard was that?" he demands, his voice rough. Loki shrugs, all nonchalance. Just a little something to spice up the evening. You know how dull feasts can get without a little excitement? The gods exchange cautious glances. They all know that Loki's idea of excitement usually spells disaster. But as Thor starts to recover, something unexpected happens. A deep, thunderous laugh erupts from his chest, and a mischievous glint sparkles in his eye. "Well, I've had worse. In fact, this might just be the most interesting thing to happen in years," he grunts, rubbing his stomach. The tension in the hall breaks, and for a moment it almost feels like old times. Loki's antics, absurd as they were, had once again turned the tide. The gods let out nervous chuckles, shaking off the unease that had settled over them. And that's when the ox enters. The grand feast was supposed to be a gathering of gods, a moment of joy and camaraderie. Yet the sight of the massive creature entering the hall does not inspire a feeling of festivity. It was supposed to be Thor's big contribution to the meal. An ox fit for the gods. What was meant to be the pinnacle of the evening has, instead, become the moment of greatest concern. Thor's pride is on the line. He huffs and gestures grandly. "Behold, the finest ox in all of Asgard," he declares, throwing a heavy arm over the beast's thick shoulders. The ox, however, seems entirely unimpressed, its large dark eyes barely acknowledging the thunder god. The animal is massive, much larger than any ox that Thor had ever seen or even thought to raise. Its coat is dark as midnight, and it emits a low, menacing grunt as it lumbers into the hall, bumping into tables and knocking over stools. The gods jump back, startled as the ox's massive form takes up more space than expected. Thor,"
Odin says from his throne, his voice tinged with a rare seriousness. "What exactly is this beast?" Thor stares at the ox for a moment, blinking, his face full of confusion. "He's just an ox, just bigger than the usual sort," he says, clearly in denial. He pats the ox on the back again, but the creature seems only to grow more agitated. Suddenly, the ox lets out a booming roar, far louder than any normal animal would be capable of, sending the gods scattering in a flurry of movements. The creature thrashes its head violently, and before anyone can react, it rears up on its hind legs and charges straight for the banquet table. Chaos erupts in the hall, plates clatter to the floor, goblets spill over, and food is sent flying through the air, like it's nothing more than debris in the wake of a storm. The gods scramble, trying to avoid the enraged ox, some even taking shelter behind pillars. Thor, at first stunned by the ox's unexpected aggression, finally breaks into a laugh. "Ha ha ha ha! Now that's what I call a feast!" I bellow between my laughs. "Come on, let's see if we can tame it, eh?" Loki watches the scene unfold with a growing sense of enjoyment. He leans against one of the wooden pillars, arms folded across his chest, a smirk plastered across his face. "I think the ox is just as excited about the feast as you are, Thor," he quips, raising an eyebrow. But then things take another unexpected turn. The ox, seemingly unable to calm down, charges toward the far end of the hall, where the walls are lined with precious artifacts from different realms. As it smashes through the barrier that protected these sacred items, something clicks. The ox is no ordinary beast. It's a force, a harbinger of something more dangerous, a beast that shouldn't even belong in Valhalla. Odin's brow furrows. He stands, leaning forward, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What is this? This beast is no mere ox," he mutters under his breath, the air around him growing tense. Thor stops laughing as the gravity of the situation hits him. The ox, once a symbol of his strength, has now become a terrifying threat, one that threatens to ruin the entire feast and everything else in its path. "What have I done to myself?" Thor mutters to himself, his tone less certain than before. Loki's voice breaks the tension again. "Oh, Thor, you're a master at starting feasts, but this one might just need a little more control."
The feast in the making. The chaos caused by the ox leaves a trail of destruction in its wake, and Valhalla's mighty halls are filled with clattering sounds of overturned tables and gods shouting in confusion. The laughter that once echoed through the hall is replaced by urgency and the sounds of footsteps as the gods scatter, trying to avoid the out-of-control beast. You stand there, caught between disbelief and amusement, as Thor, the god of thunder, tries to regain control. His thunderous voice commands the ox to cease its rampage, but the beast seems far more intent on destruction than on listening to any godly authority. As the gods rally to control the situation, Loki strolls into the center of the chaos, still grinning. He takes a few steps forward, his gaze fixed on Thor and the ox. He raises a hand as if to cast a spell, but before he can, Odin's booming voice calls out, "Enough, Loki!" Odin says, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 storms.
We will not let your tricks turn this feast into a disaster. Loki shrugs casually, his grin never faltering. I'm not doing anything yet. He raises an eyebrow, his gaze flicking back to the ox. But I suppose a little mischief wouldn't hurt. With one final defiant stomp, the ox settles down, its rage subsiding, though its eyes still burn with an unsettling fire. Thor, wiping his brow, looks at the animal in frustration and disbelief. This is supposed to be the greatest feast in all of Asgard, he exclaims, clearly shaken by the unexpected turn of events. Odin walks up to Thor, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. The gods did not come here just for food, he says with a quiet intensity. They came to witness something greater. This feast is more than sustenance. It is a symbol of unity. And now it is up to us to make sure it remains so. As Odin's words hang in the air, a strange quiet descends on the room. The ox, now calm, stands still in the center of the hall, its massive frame casting a shadow across the ornate golden floor of Valhalla. The gods, shaken but unbroken, begin to rebuild the feast. The food is retrieved, the drinks refilled, and the atmosphere begins to shift, slowly returning to the celebratory mood that had once been promised. You take a deep breath, your senses tingling with the energy of the moment. Despite the chaos, the feast is still happening. The gods, while imperfect, are determined to continue. The kitchen staff, who had been nervously watching from the sidelines, now rush to prepare the first course, eager to prove themselves after the brief but intense interruption. Thor, as always, takes charge of the scene, organizing the cleanup with his usual boisterous energy. We'll make this feast great, he declares, lifting a goblet high. The gods deserve nothing less. Odin steps forward, his eyes scanning the gods, who were now beginning to settle back into their places. And we shall give it to them, he says, voice carrying the weight of his ancient wisdom. This feast is the beginning of something much larger than any of us can imagine. But be warned, it will not come with its own challenges. The gods, invigorated by Odin's words, take their seats around the great table. The servants bring in dishes fit for the mightiest of warriors, roasted meat, exotic fruits, and pastries gleaming with golden honey. The hall fills once again with laughter and chatter as the gods, their nerves slowly returning to normal, dive into the meal. You feel a shift in the air, a sense of anticipation. The feast is more than just a celebration of Asgard's might and grandeur. It is a moment in time, a gathering of divine beings who have for so long lived under the shadow of their own immense power. And yet, here they are, coming together to share this one moment, this one feast, and the promise of something more. Loki watches from the side, his arms crossed and his lips curling into a knowing smile. Yes, he murmurs under his breath, this will be an interesting night indeed. As the gods raise their goblet, you sense that this feast is only the beginning of something far greater. Whatever happens next, it will echo through the halls of Valhalla for centuries to come.
Frasia's first culinary disaster.
As the gods settle into their places, the mood lightens, but there is an underlying sense of unease. Something is still amiss, and the tension that lingered earlier is far from forgotten. It isn't long before Freyja, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, steps forward with her own offering to the feast. She's determined to impress the gods with her culinary skills, especially after the dramatic entrance of the ox. Freyja is a goddess of refinement, elegance, and grace. But when it comes to cooking, she has always struggled. While she is undoubtedly skilled in many things, the art of creating a feast worthy of the gods is not one of them. Her heart is in the right place, but her attempt to join the ranks of Asgard's finest chefs may be more ambitious than her abilities can support. With a grand flourish, Freyja presents her creation, a dish meant to embody the heart of Valhalla itself. She calls it ambrosia of the gods, a delicate blend of exotic fruits, honeyed meats, and rich spices. The gods are intrigued, their interest piqued by her enthusiasm. But even from the first glance, you can tell something isn't quite right. The fruits glisten unnaturally, and the honey seems too thick, almost sticky in a way that doesn't seem natural. Freyja stands proudly before her dish, her golden hair shimmering in the light. I have worked tirelessly to bring you a creation unlike any other, a dish that embodies the very spirit of Valhalla itself. May it bring joy to your hearts and nourishment to your spirits. But as she places the dish before Odin, something peculiar happens. The smell that rises from the plate is not the sweet, tantalizing scent the gods had expected. Instead, it is overpowering, a mixture of too many spices and flavors that collide in the air. Thor wrinkles his nose, his usual hearty appetite faltering for the first time. "What in the name of Asgard is that smell?" he asks, his tone one of confusion and distaste. Freyja stands there, clearly mortified, as the gods exchange uncomfortable glances. The dish which had been meant to impress is now the source of quiet disappointment. Loki, ever the trickster, can't barely contain his amusement. He sidles up to Freyja with a mischievous smile on his face. "You've outdone yourself, Freyja. This will certainly be memorable." Freyja turns to Loki, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. It's not supposed to smell like this," she stammers, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. "It's supposed to be perfect." But the gods, unable to hide their reactions, begin to chuckle, albeit nervously. It's clear that Freyja's dish, while made with good intentions, has become the highlight of the evening for all the wrong reasons. Thor, ever the good sport, raises his goblet in a mock salute. To Freyja, for creating something truly unforgettable. The gods erupt into laughter, and though Freyja is embarrassed, she can't help but join in, her laughter ringing through the hall. After all, what else could she do? The feast which had begun with so much promise now stands as a testament to the chaos of the evening, and perhaps to the unpredictable nature of the gods themselves. Next time, perhaps I will leave the cooking to the professionals. Loki, his eyes twinkling with amusement, leans over to Odin. "You know, Odin, this is the best feast I've ever attended." Odin, his stern expression softening just a little, nods slowly. Indeed, Loki, sometimes the most memorable moments come from the unlikeliest of sources. And with that, the gods continue with their meal, the atmosphere slowly shifting back to a celebratory tone, though the memory of Frasia's dish will linger, as all great moments in Valhalla do. Not as a failure, but as a reminder that even the gods are not immune to the whims of fate. The feast is far from over, but just as it is always in Valhalla, the gods' adventures, whether disastrous or delightful, will continue, with Loki's grin never far from sight, and Frasia's determination to impress still burning brightly. There's no telling what the next course might bring.
Thor's attempt to conquer the kitchen. The laughter dies down, and the gods, their spirits lifted by the playful chaos, return to their feasting. Yet in the back of the hall there's a stir, a growing tension, like a brewing storm on the horizon. Thor, never one to be outdone, seems visibly frustrated by the attention Frey's culinary disaster has garnered. For a god whose identity is so tied to strength, thunder, and victory, the idea of being bested by a mere dish, especially one as unimpressive as Frey's, is unbearable. And so a plan begins to form in his mind. He stands up abruptly, his massive form towering over the other gods. The room falls silent, the gods exchanging wary glances. Thor raises his hand, a sign for attention, and unslams his fist onto the banquet table with a force that shakes the very foundation of Valhalla. Enough! He booms, his voice echoing through the hall. This feast has been a disaster, but no more. If no one else can manage a proper meal, then I, Thor, will take control of the kitchen myself. The gods blink in surprise. Thor, the god of thunder, the slayer of giants, is stepping into the very realm of domesticity. And not just any kitchen, a kitchen filled with ingredients more foreign than any Thor has ever seen. It's one thing to hurl a giant skull into the fire. It's quite another to prepare an edible dish from the strange assortment of Midgardian ingredients. Loki, ever the observer, leans against a pillar, smirking. Ah, Thor, the mighty god of thunder, reduced to chopping vegetables, he murmurs under his breath, barely containing his laughter. Thor, however, is undeterred. His pride is on the line. His eyes gleam with determination, and he rolls up his sleeves, an action that feels almost absurd on a god of his stature, but no less symbolic. He steps toward the kitchen, grunting with exhaustion, and grabs an oversized wooden spoon, as though preparing to wage war against the ingredients themselves. Let's see if the sea spice is as dangerous as it smells, he mutters to himself, preparing the strange Midgardian ingredients that Loki had so kindly provided. The gods watch in silence, unsure of what to expect. At first, everything seems fine. Thor is chopping vegetables with his usual enthusiasm, smashing garlic bulbs with his fists and tossing them into a pot with an intensity that nearly caused the kitchen walls to crack. He is a force of nature in the kitchen, as he is in every other aspect of his life. The gods watch him, their skepticism slowly turning to something closer to amusement. Maybe, just maybe, Thor could actually pull this off. But then disaster strikes,
As Thor tries to stir the contents of the pot with the wooden spoon, he accidentally knocks over a jar of honey, sending it splashing onto the firewood. The flames flare up uncontrollably, catching several nearby fabrics. Within seconds, the entire area is filled with thick, smoky clouds. The gods cough and wave their hands frantically to clear the smoke. "Thor, not the fire!" Freya yells, trying to wave away the smoke and not laughing at the sight of the thunder god fumbling with the kitchen. Thor, now panicked, attempts to fan the flames away with his mighty hands, but the smoke only seems to grow thicker, and the kitchen turns into a chaotic scene of divine cooking gone awry. "No, no, no! This was supposed to be perfect!" Thor mutters as he kicks over a bucket of water in an attempt to douse the fire, only to cause a larger puddle on the floor. "Let me guess," Loki calls out from across the room. "You were going for a smoky flavor." Thor growls in frustration, his face turning a deep sheet of red, his earlier confidence replaced by a rare moment of self-doubt. The gods who had been watching in silent anticipation now erupt in laughter, not mocking, but with a sense of camaraderie. After all, even Thor, with all his might and grandeur, isn't immune to failure in the kitchen. But there's no time to dwell on the disaster. The feast must go on. The gods take it upon themselves to help restore order. Thor begrudgingly steps aside, wiping his brow and muttering to himself about never trusting Loki's advice again. As Thor steps back from the kitchen, Freya, ever graceful, takes control, making a final attempt to salvage the evening. "All right, gods of Asgard," she says with a sly grin. "It seems we may need to go back to the drawing board. But fear not, we will make sure you are fed properly, even if we must work together." And with that the gods rally. They combine their talents, their strengths, and their ingenuity. The feast, though delayed, is salvaged in a chaotic yet strangely harmonious manner. Thor may have ruined the kitchen, but in true Asgardian style, nothing is beyond repair. In the end, the gods sit together, a little messy, a little burnt, but satisfied. They raise their goblets in a toast, not to the success of the feast, but to the journey they've shared. A true Asgardian feast, full of ups, downs, laughter, and unexpected disasters. "Next time, I'll let someone else sample the cooking," Thor grumbles as he raises his glass. Loki, ever the trickster, chuckles. "And next time, Thor, you'll know that some things are best left to the professionals."
The arrival of the giants. The evening's chaos settles into a strange harmony, the laughter and music of the gods blending with the light-hearted chatter of those who managed to avoid the culinary debacles. The feast, while imperfect, is a success, and yet a new presence looms over the hall, one that shifts the atmosphere once again. The doors to the great hall of Valhalla open with a resounding crash. The ground trembles beneath the mighty steps of giants, Jotunheim's finest. They are massive beings, towering over the gods, their presence filling the room with an air of undeniable authority. Their eyes gleam with an unsettling light, and their heavy steps reverberate through the hall like thunder. You feel it in your chest, the palpable tension. The feast had been meant to celebrate unity among the gods, a peaceful gathering to share in the fruits of their labor. But with the arrival of the giants, that delicate balance of peace is immediately threatened. The gods may be mighty, but in their presence they are dwarfed. Thor, who had been recovering from his kitchen disaster, stands and straightens his posture.
His earlier laughter is replaced by a serious gaze, his brow furrowed as he sizes up the giants. He knows all too well the dangers that the Jotnar represent. They are the enemies of Asgard, and their strength rivals that of the gods themselves. Loki, ever the observer, leans casually against one of the golden pillars. Ah, the giants! Always such a timely arrival. But don't worry, Thor, I'm sure you'll thrash them just like you did that ox. Thor shoots him a look, but his mind is elsewhere, focused on the towering figures now entering the hall. One giant in particular stands out. Skadi, the huntress of Jotunheim, her icy eyes glinting with both challenge and curiosity. She is a force to be reckoned with, and the gods know that she is no mere guest at this feast. Odin stands, his voice commanding the attention of the room. You have come, giants, but do you come in peace, or are you here to cause more strife? Skadi steps forward, her massive frame dwarfing Odin's presence, and her voice booms in the hall. We come as invited guests, Odin All-Father, she says, her tone sharp as the cold winds of her homeland. Do not mistake us for enemies today. We have come to see if your gods can truly deliver on their promises of grand feasts and greater alliances. The gods exchange uneasy glances. There is no mistaking the challenge in Skadi's words. The giants have come to test the gods, to see if they are worthy of any true alliance. And the gods, in their pride, know that they cannot back down. Freya, ever the diplomat, steps forward with grace and poise, offering a welcoming smile despite the tension in the air. We welcome you, Skadi, and all your kin. Join us in our celebration. Let us see if we can find common ground in our feasting, as we once did in battle. Skadi's icy gaze softens slightly as she regards Freya, though there is still a challenge in her eyes. Very well, she replies, but remember, gods of Asgard, we are not here simply for food. We seek something more, something to test your strength. Thor tightens his grip on his goblet, ready to react, but Odin raises his hand, silencing him. There will be no fighting tonight, but understand this, Skadi. You may test our strength, but do not think we will bow to you or your kin. The tension crackles in the air like an approaching storm. The gods, while mighty, now find themselves facing a challenge that is not as easily won as the battles of old. Skadi's presence, her cold gaze, and the giant's massive size remind them of the ancient rivalry that has long defined Asgard's relationship with the Jotnar. Loki, sensing an opportunity to further stir the pot, speaks up, his voice laced with humor. Oh, this is rich. Perhaps we should have a contest, a friendly little challenge, eh? Who can eat the most boar? Who can drink the most mead? Maybe even a game of strength. I'm sure Thor here would love that. Thor glares at Loki, but his suggestion isn't as absurd as it sounds. A test of strength, a game of skill, could settle this tension once and for all. But he knows well that the giant's strength cannot be matched so easily, especially not by a boastful challenge. Skadi smirks at Loki's suggestion. A contest, she asks. Do you think the giants will be satisfied with such trivial games?
Before Loki can respond, Thor steps forward, his massive frame towering over the gathered gods and giants. "If it's a contest you want, Scotty, then it's a contest you shall get. But know this, our strength is not to be tested lightly. And if you seek to test us, you will find the gods of Asgard are not so easily defeated." The air is thick with the anticipation of what's to come. The giants have not come to be entertained. They have come to see if the gods truly possess the strength, wisdom, and unity to stand against them. And as the night stretches on, with the fire crackling in the hearth, and the tension simmering just below the surface, you realize one thing. This feast was never just about food. It was always about power, pride, and the unrelenting challenge of the gods against the giants. The true contest begins now.
The battle for the best seat. The atmosphere in the great hall of Valhalla shifts yet again, this time into an air of simmering rivalry. The arrival of the giants has already cast a shadow over the night's festivities. But what follows is something entirely unexpected. A subtle, yet persistent competition for the best seat at the table. It is not a contest of strength, nor a challenge of wit. No, this is something far more personal, more primal. The gods of Asgard, ever proud and always hungry for power, have begun a silent battle to secure their place in Valhalla's grand hall. The seat at the head of the table, reserved for Odin himself, sits empty for a moment as Odin steps away to converse with the giants. And in that brief moment of vacancy, the gods begin to look around, assessing their positions, their standing. Loki, ever the observer, leans back with a wicked smile. He says in a voice dripping with sarcasm, "You know, there is a certain aura that comes with sitting at the head of the table, a seat of power. But I'm sure none of you are interested in such trivial matters." Thor, his earlier frustration forgotten, eyes the empty chair with a new intensity. It is not enough to be seen as the strongest. No, Thor wants to be seen as the leader, the one who commands the respect of the room. He makes his way toward the chair, a heavy hand resting on its back, as if staking a claim. But before he can settle into the seat, Freya steps forward, her grace unmatched. "Excuse me, Thor," she says, with a polite smile, though there's a fire in her eyes. "I believe this seat was left open for Odin, and if you wish to challenge for it, I would suggest you earn it first." Freya's challenge is not just spoken in words. It is embodied in every movement, in the way she holds herself with quiet dignity, as if her very presence demands respect. She is not here to simply stand aside. She is a goddess in her own right, and she will not allow anyone, not even Thor, to take the seat without proving their worth. Thor pauses, staring at her for a long moment. The gods watch, their eyes darting between them, sensing the tension in the air. It is not just about a seat. It is about power, dominance, and who will ultimately stand as the leader of this moment.
The giants, who have been silent observers until now, begin to murmur amongst themselves. Skadi, standing tall with her icy gaze, seems amused. The gods of Asgard, ever so dramatic, she whispers to her kin, though her voice carries across the hall. Loki, still lounging casually, leans in toward Skadi. Oh, the drama is only just beginning. Just wait until they start throwing mead. The tension is palpable, but it is not only the gods who are feeling it. You too can sense the weight of the moment. The air crackles with the energy of competition, and not just for the seat, but for something greater, the approval of Odin, the respect of the gods, and the control over the future of Valhalla itself. Freya stands her ground, her eyes unwavering. Thor, you are mighty, but power comes not from brute strength alone. A leader must command respect, and that is something you will have to earn, she says, her voice steady but firm. Thor, his pride taking a blow, but not easily broken, finally steps back. He gives her a brief nod, acknowledging her strength. Perhaps this seat is better left for a god of wisdom, he mutters, though the glint of competitiveness never fully leaves his gaze. The moment lingers, and the gods seem to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Freya has claimed the seat, at least for now. But Thor's challenge, though subtle, has left its mark. As the gods resume their places, the tension lingers, hovering over the feast like a cloud. But the true winner of this contest is not yet clear. The gods may have fought for a seat at the table, but the true battle, the one for the soul of Valhalla, is still to come. The banquet continues, though the laughter is quieter, more cautious. Every word spoken feels heavy, as if the gods are acutely aware of the frailty of the alliances they are trying to forge. The meal is no longer just about sustenance, but about who we lead, who will dominate, and who will remain in the shadows. And as the evening unfolds, one thing becomes clear. This night, this feast, is more than just food or drink. It is about the shifting tides of power, and who will come out on top when the final course is served.
The mystery of the golden stag. As the gods settle into their seats, their earlier rivalry forgotten for the moment, the feast continues with an uneasy sense of grandeur. The tension has not entirely dissipated. It lingers like the smell of spilled mead in the air. But now, something far more mysterious is about to unfold. Out of nowhere, a figure emerges from the shadows at the far end of the hall, a figure that seems to radiate a strange and mystical presence. It's not a god nor a giant, but something far more elusive, a creature, a beast that should not exist in the realms of Valhalla. A golden stag, its coat shimmering with an ethereal glow, steps silently into the center of the hall, causing a sudden hush to fall over the gods. It moves with a grace that defies its size, its antlers like the branches of Yggdrasil itself, reaching towards the heavens. Its eyes glow like twin orbs of light, and the very air around it seems to bend in response to its presence. Loki, who had been enjoying the spectacle of the gods' earlier squabbles, falls silent for the first time all evening. The golden stag is no ordinary creature. There is something divine about it, something ancient and otherworldly.
"Where did it come from?" Thor mutters, his voice low. He leans forward, his hands gripping the table. "I've never seen anything like it."
The stag does not make a sound, but its gaze sweeps over the room, locking eyes with each god in turn. There is an unsettling stillness in the air as the gods watch, mesmerized by the creature's beauty and power. It is as though time has slowed, and for a moment the grandeur of Valhalla, the clattering of goblets and plates, fades into the background. Freya, always attuned to the mysteries of the world, stands, her eyes fixed on the stag. She says, "This is no mere animal." She takes a cautious step forward, but the stag does not retreat. It stands firm, its golden coat gleaming in the soft glow of the hall as eternal light.
"What is its purpose?" Odin asks, his voice commanding attention. He too is intrigued by the stag, but there is a flicker of concern in his ancient eyes. "Why has it appeared now?" The stag does not answer, of course, but there is something in the way it holds itself, in the way the gods feel the air around them shift, that speaks volumes. It is here for a reason, but what that reason is, no one knows. As the creature stands in the center of the hall, its golden antlers almost seem to glow brighter. A soft wind begins to stir, even within the confines of Valhalla's great hall, as if the stag had called upon the elements themselves. Then, without warning, the creature begins to walk toward Odin's throne. The gods part as it moves, instinctively understanding that the stag is not to be interrupted. Its steps are silent, but its presence is overwhelming. It reaches Odin and stops before him, lowering its head slightly as if offering a gesture of reverence. The room is dead silent. Odin, unmoving, regards the creature with a mixture of suspicion and reverence. His gaze hardens as he looks into the stag's glowing eyes. He reaches out a hand, and the room seems to hold its breath. When his fingers touch the stag's antler, the entire hall shudders. A sudden, inexplicable burst of power courses through the air, vibrating through the floor beneath the god's feet. It feels as though the very foundation of Valhalla itself is shaking. The golden stag's antlers hum, and a soft light erupts from its eyes, illuminating the hall in a way that no torch or flame ever could. Then, as quickly as it started, the light fades. The stag steps back, its mission complete, its presence fulfilled. The gods are left standing in its wake, the room buzzing with the remnants of its presence. And now the gods of Asgard understand something they had not before. This feast, this evening, is not just about food or camaraderie or even power. It is the beginning of something far greater, and the forces that govern their fate are more complex than they had ever imagined. The banquet continues, but the gods now know that their time in Valhalla may be drawing to a close. The stag was only the first sign, and they are far from prepared for what comes next.
Loki's spell. The golden stag's departure leaves the gods in a strange state of quiet. It is as if the very air has thickened, the sense of impending change hanging over them like a storm cloud waiting to break. The food, now barely touched by the gods, seems less important than it did moments ago. The night's celebration has been overshadowed by something far more mysterious and unsettling. As the gods murmur amongst themselves, Loki stands at the edge of the hall, his ever-present smirk playing on his lips. His eyes glint with a mixture of mischief and something darker. He has been watching the entire spectacle unfold, and as the silence deepens, he knows it is time to introduce a little more chaos. After all, what better way to end a feast than with a little Loki brand pandemonium? With a casual flick to his wrist, Loki speaks, his voice low but filled with a dangerous energy. So, my friends, shall we see how truly secure our little realm of Valhalla is? He grins, savoring the effect his words have on the gods around him. What are you planning, Loki? Odin's voice is like a thunderclap, though the weariness in it suggests he already knows the answer. The All-Father has seen Loki's tricks more times than he cares to count. But there is something in the air tonight, something different. Loki's smile widens as he steps forward, his presence taking center stage. Oh, just a little bit of magic, Odin, he says, his tone sweet and innocent, as though nothing could go wrong. Just a little push to see what happens when the gods' fates are truly tested. Before anyone can react, Loki's hands are raised in the air, and a soft, almost imperceptible hum fills the hall. The gods pause, sensing the change in the atmosphere. The same energy that had come with the appearance of the golden stag is now being manipulated by Loki, this time in a more overtly dangerous manner. A series of symbols appear in the air before Loki, glowing with a soft, eerie light. They are runes, ancient and powerful, that none of the gods, even Odin, fully understand. Loki's voice, low and melodic, chants words in an ancient tongue, and as he does, the runes begin to twist and shimmer, warping the very space around them. A portal begins to open in the air, its edges crackling with energy. The gods, their senses now on high alert, watch in stunned silence as Loki continues. There is something familiar about the portal, something that links it to the very realm of Valhalla itself. It isn't a portal to another land or realm. It is a rift, a tear in the fabric of the god's domain. "Loki, stop!" Freya shouts, but her voice is filled with a mix of fear and anger. She knows well that once Loki opens a portal, there is no telling what will come through it. And yet, there is no stopping him. His magic is ancient, and his will is stronger than anyone in Valhalla can comprehend. As Loki's spell deepens, the room begins to shake. The light from the portal grows brighter, its energy crackling as if a storm were about to burst from it. Thor steps forward, his brow furrowed, his hand gripping the hilt of his Mjolnir, though he knows full well that his strength alone will not be enough to stop Loki this time. "You've gone too far, Loki!" Thor roars, but Loki just laughs, his voice ringing out like a bell in the chaos. "Oh, Thor," Loki says, his voice dripping with amusement. "You've never understood the finer points of magic, have you? This isn't about power or strength. It's about something far more interesting. What happens when the gods are faced with something they cannot control? Something that tests their resolve." The portal pulsates once more, sending a shockwave through the hall. For a moment, the gods are frozen, their senses overwhelmed by the energy emanating from the tear in reality. And then, with a sound like thunder, something steps through the portal. It is huge, a creature that seems to dwarf the very structure of Valhalla itself. Its body is a swirling mass of shadows and light, its form shifting like a mirage, impossible to focus on. Its eyes glow with a brilliant, otherworldly light, piercing the darkness of the hall with a gaze that seems to look straight through every god present. The creature steps forward, and as it does, the air grows cold, biting, almost frozen. The gods feel it in their bones, a presence like no other, something primal, something ancient. It is a being that does not belong here, that should not exist in the realms of the gods. "Loki!" Odin growls, his voice seething with barely contained rage. But Loki, ever the trickster, only smiles.
None too serious, Odin. Just giving everyone a little challenge. The creature's form shifts once again, its body seemingly composed of the very darkness itself. And it speaks, a voice that echoes not in words, but in a deep, resonating hum that seems to come from the very core of the universe. I am Heimdrag, the wanderer between worlds. I come from beyond the barriers you have so carefully constructed. I come to see if the gods are truly worthy of the power they hold. Your worlds have grown complacent. Let us see if you can still fight. As Heimdrag stepped fully into Valhalla, the gods braced themselves, their hands tightening around weapons and shields, ready for a battle that will test the very fabric of their existence. Loki's grin grows wider, and he turns to Odin, his eyes flashing with glee. Now, Odin, my dear old friend, let's see if the gods can truly face what lies beyond their walls.
The aftermath and restoration of peace. The whole of Valhalla has erupted into chaos. The creature, Heimdrog, looms over the gods, its very presence warping the reality of the banquet. A cold, unnatural chill fills the air, suffocating the once warm and celebratory atmosphere of the feast. Every god stands ready, weapons drawn, and gazes fixed on the dark being that now inhabits their secret hall. Thor grips Mjolnir, his knuckles white with tension, while Freyja readies her dagger, her eyes narrowed. Odin, as always, remains composed, but there's a subtle shift in his posture, a readiness that suggests he's preparing for something far beyond mere physical combat. Loki stands on the sidelines, watching with a mix of amusement and something darker, as though he knows more about Heimdrug than he's letting on. Heimdrog's eyes, glowing with an eerie brilliance, sweep across the gods, his voice echoing again, deep and grumbling. I have walked through the cracks in your worlds, gods of Asgard. I have seen what lies beyond, and I come to test you. The age of peace is over. Let us see if you can defend your realms, or if you are nothing more than the echoes of forgotten power. The creature's form shifts, stretching and contorting in a way that defies natural laws. The gods prepare themselves, but there is no denying the overwhelming force that Heimdrog embodies. His very presence seems to drain the light from the room, casting long, unnatural shadows that stretch like tendrils across the floor. But then, just as quickly as it appeared, something shifts within the gods. Thor, his confidence unshaken despite the terror before them, steps forward, Mjolnir raised high. You may be mighty, but you're not invincible, Thor says, his voice a rumble of thunder that echoes through Valhalla's great hall. His words ignite the gods to action. Freyja's blade gleams in the low light, and Odin's hand moves to his spear, Gungnir, his grip steady and strong. Even Loki, despite his usual air of nonchalance, seems more focused now, his eyes scanning the room, looking for an opening. The battle begins. The gods move as one, launching themselves at Heimdrog with all their might.
Thor charges first, swinging Mjolnir with such force that the air crackles with energy. The hammer strikes Heimdrog, but the blow doesn't land with the satisfying crash that the gods are accustomed to. Instead, the creature twists and contorts in a way that defies natural laws, vanishing and reappearing in an instant. Loki watches, intrigued. This one is tricky, he muses, his voice barely above a whisper. It's not like any opponent we've faced before. Odin's voice rings out with authority. Do not be fooled. It is not invincible. It is simply outside the reach of your physical strength. We must strike at its essence. The gods quickly adjust, realizing that brute force alone won't be enough. Instead, they begin to focus on the creature's essence, its very form. Freyja leads the charge, her movement swift and graceful as she stabs at the shadows, her dagger gleaming with ethereal light. Loki's magic comes into play, weaving spells to bind the creature's movements, to trap it within the confines of reality. Even the lowliest of tricks, it seems, can be used against an entity as powerful as Heimdrug. The battle rages on, the whole of Valhalla now a blur of light and shadow. Thor's hammer strikes with every ounce of his divine strength, each blow sending ripples through the fabric of reality itself. But Heimdrug is no ordinary enemy. It slips through the gods' grasp, weaving through their attacks with an unnatural speed. Every time it seems cornered, it escapes with a laugh that chills the very air. But the gods do not falter. It is Odin, ever wise and strategic, who finally sees the key to defeating the creature. With a single decisive motion, he raises Gungnir, calling upon the power of the All-Father himself. The spear hums with energy as Odin chants the ancient words of binding, the power of Yggdrasil flowing through him. A blinding light erupts from Gungnir, wrapping around Heimdrug like a net of pure energy. Heimdrug thrashes against the binding, its form shaking with rage, but it is no use. The gods have finally found its weakness. It howls in frustration, but the magic holds, and with a final earth-shattering crash, it is bound. The whole falls silent, the glow of Odin's spear still flickering in the dim light. The gods stand, breathing heavily, their bodies weary from the battle. The giant stag that had once seemed so powerful now lies in a heap, vanquished by their combined efforts. Loki steps forward, his mark returning as he surveys the aftermath. "Well, that was quite the interesting turn of events," he says, eyeing Odin. "I suppose this feast will go down in history, after all." Odin, though fatigued, nods in agreement. "Indeed, Loki, and let this serve as a reminder. Nothing in Valhalla is guaranteed, not even our place at the table." As the gods begin to clean up the remnants of their chaotic feast, the giant stag's body vanishes as if it were never there. The reality of Valhalla snaps back into place, the normal flow of time returning to its steady rhythm. The gods gathered together once more, though the weight of the night's events still lingers in the air. They sit down again, the food before them now cold and forgotten. But the bonds forged through battle, through struggle, are stronger than any meal could provide. And as the gods look at each other, they know this. Their strength lies not just in their power, but in their unity. Together, they have faced an unimaginable force, and together,
They have triumphed. For now, at least, peace returns to Valhalla. But even the gods know that this victory is but temporary. The true battle for the future of the realms has only just begun.
Deep in the heart where the tall trees rise, a secret realm beneath the sky. The moss it whispers the brook it holds, a woodland song where magic mushrooms glow in a silver